Hey there! Thank you for tuning into DuckBricks. I'm Chris, and well, if you're watching this video, you are probably aware that for the 90th anniversary of LEGO in 2022, LEGO Ideas is running a fan vote to determine a 20th anniversary special limited edition set to celebrate this anniversary based off of one of LEGO's old and discontinued LEGO themes. Of course, many viewers of my channel will know that I am a major fan of Bionicle, and I initially put out a video at around 5 a.m. in my time zone when the announcement was made. I was very excited, and I was telling people about the details of this vote and asking them to please vote for Bionicle if they wanted to. But after I've given it a few days thought, I've kind of been really thinking over this competition and trying to weigh out what kinds of chances does Bionicle really have. And so the purpose of this video is to provide a completely unbiased look, trying to look at objectively, does Bionicle stand a chance, and if not, what is the most likely theme to win? Now, as a LEGO and Bionicle fan, I am trying to keep as objective in this matter as possible. Of course, I personally would love for Bionicle to be picked for this vote, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, and to do so and analyze this, I'm going to have to set aside my own personal feelings and wishes for Bionicle to succeed, and try to analyze what's, well, figuratively and literally on the table in front of us. So for the fan vote, LEGO Ideas announced 30 classic themes where people could vote for and have chosen to be in the top 3 themes to consider being made a set out of. So let's step back and take a look at how this fan vote even works. So there are 2 major rounds of this vote. For the first round, people have 3 votes in total, where they can vote for any of the 30 LEGO sub-themes and try to propel them towards the second round, in which the top 3 out of this vote will be analyzed and one of them will be made a set. Now, what's very interesting is that this first vote is completely transparent. LEGO is releasing the results of this first vote where everyone can see how the themes rank. However, for the second vote, LEGO is choosing not to be transparent with this. They say it's in order to allow a little bit of a surprise, is what LEGO says officially. Now, for me personally, I have my own suspicions, but we'll get into that later in the video. Suffice to say that despite whatever you vote for the top 3 themes to make it onto the list, LEGO has full authority to essentially just choose whichever one they want. Now, will the winner of this second vote probably be the set? Yeah, I'd say there's a pretty heavy chance that LEGO will take a look at the results and probably pick the first place winner of this vote to make the set. But I'm sure that LEGO has a few safeguards that just in case a theme wins that they maybe weren't fully prepared to prepare a set for the 20th anniversary, maybe then they'll pick the second choice place to be made into a set or something like that. But I want to get into first taking a look at all the 30 themes. Now, of course, this is not all the 30 sub-themes. I have only chosen some of the representative samples of a few certain themes that I feel have a pretty strong chance of being relatively popular among the AFOL crowd. Well then, I think the best way to get started is just pulling up a list of these 30 themes and analyzing it, thanks to Brickset, which has compiled them in a very nice list. So starting off with number 1, we've got LEGO Adventurers here. So I've brought over a representative sample set. This is the Adventurers Blimp. And for people who are not aware, LEGO Adventurers was a classic LEGO theme featuring the fan favorite minifigure character Johnny Thunder. In fact, Johnny Thunder was so popular that he eventually became almost the LEGO Group's mascot, especially around the years of 1999 to 2003. Johnny Thunder was featured on many LEGO Club magazines, and he even crossed over with quite a few other LEGO action themes happening around the same time, at least on the pages of the comics in these books. Adventurers has a huge fan following because essentially it was LEGO's answer to Indiana Jones before they had the license, but because it wasn't licensed, they had a lot of freedom for Johnny Thunder and his gang to explore a ton of more interesting locations. For example, they started off with Johnny Thunder touring around Egypt and exploring pyramids, sphinxes, and whatnot, but then later on they moved to the jungle. Eventually they migrate to a place called Dino Island, where we got some of the first sculpted LEGO molded dinosaurs, which was a real treat to get, especially at that time. And finally, culminating in a sub-theme called Orient Expedition, Johnny Thunder and his gang traveled around Asia, where specifically they went to India, China, and a ton of other places, including even the Himalayan mountains, as well as learn a little bit about archaeology and exploration along the way. Johnny Thunder was, of course, followed by his nemesis, Sam Sinister, who was basically a guy trying to steal all of the artifacts to himself. There were a number of fantastical elements, including a reawakened mummy, of course you've got the dinosaurs, and even a dragon in one of the later years. Adventures has had quite a following and legacy in the LEGO group, to the point where several characters in modern LEGO themes are actually named after or called descendants of Johnny Thunder, specifically in the Pharaoh's Quest and 2010 Dinosaur sub-theme, as well as Johnny Thunder actually getting a revamped minifigure for 2014's The LEGO Movie, as well as getting a collectible minifigure reimagining just last year. In fact, the most recent reference to adventurers in Johnny Thunder came in the recent Gardens of Ninjago City set, where you can see Johnny Thunder and Pippin Reed, his sidekick, Egyptian background. So, Adventurers, I feel, has a really solid chance, but the question is, will it be outweighed by some of the other themes on this list? That is really up to tell, but it definitely has one of the strongest showings out of all these 30 themes. The next one up is LEGO Alpha Team. Now, I did not bring a representative toy from LEGO Alpha Team because while it was popular, it never quite reached the popularity of Adventures. Alpha Team was essentially LEGO's top secret high-tech spy agency. This was way before they made Agents and Ultra Agents, and funnily enough, LEGO Alpha Team was first conceptualized as a video game featuring a lot of zany characters and really interesting stuff, until it was toned down a little bit more to focus on just a high-tech spy thriller theme. LEGO Alpha Team served as the prototype for many of the secret agent themes today, like the aforementioned Agents and Ultra Agents, and featured a cast of very memorable characters, lasting for several years, always fighting against the evil Ogle, whose name, of course spelled backwards, says LEGO. Alpha Team was very popular, but again, never reached the height of Adventurers, and I can't even see this reaching the top 5, let alone the top 3. So we can definitely move on. The next one up is Aquazone. So I have brought over an Aquazone submarine because I do feel like Aquazone has a relatively decent chance, but probably won't make it to the top 3. Kind of like Adventurers. And I say this because Aquazone has actually had a chance to come back quite a lot in recent LEGO themes. It was the first LEGO action and adventure diving underwater-centric theme, and they featured all sorts of different factions. This yellow and blue sub right here is from the mainline Aquazone faction, but within this same line, they fought the villainous Aqua Sharks. There were some Manta Ray inspired sets, and even some Stingray stuff as well. So all sorts of different factions. And spawning from the Aquazone sub-theme, we got Aqua Raiders 1, which was an original early proto version of Aqua Raiders, and eventually Aqua Raiders 2, which is the theme that many people might be familiar with, lasted only 1 year in 2007 and featured a color scheme very similar to this. Aqua Raiders even gets referenced in stuff like Atlantis, which was LEGO's most recent underwater exploration-focused theme in 2011. That being said, I don't think that the underwater novelty and concept is enough to really release a commemorative set for the 90th anniversary, although that's really a shame because I would love to see this concept reimagined in the modern era of LEGO building. The last time we got an underwater theme was, of course, with Atlantis in 2011, and LEGO has evolved so much since then that I'd love to see how they would interpret this in modern times. The next one up is LEGO Arctic. So, honestly, I think that this is a little bit of a throwaway theme. And LEGO Arctic was a sub-theme of LEGO Town, but it's really been redone twice in very modern years. The recent LEGO City version of Arctic is basically as close as you'll get to the actual Arctic sets. I mean, they didn't even change the color scheme from the orange and everything, so honestly, I don't really even know why Arctic was included on this list, and actually I do have quite a few thoughts on this, and we'll explore that as we go into the video after I recap all the themes, but I don't see why Arctic was on this list. It's not particularly memorable, although it did introduce some nice new animal molds like the polar bear, and in recent years the Arctic sub-theme of City introduced the saber-toothed tiger and the mammoth, which are welcome additions to the LEGO animal line. But I can't even imagine this being in the top half of the list. It's probably going to land somewhere near the bottom, so I don't think that one really poses a significant threat to any themes that you may want to show up. The next one in alphabetical order is Bionicle. And we're going to have a lot to talk about with Bionicle later on in this video. I presume that if you're watching this video, you are relatively familiar with Bionicle. For those of you who might be just watching this because you're curious about the LEGO Ideas stuff and looking for some sort of unbiased opinion, Bionicle was, of course, LEGO's first major action figure line of sets. You can see one of the classic Bionicle sets, Toa Tahu here. And unlike some of the other entrants on this list, like Classic Castle, Pirates, or Space, Bionicle hasn't really gotten a revamped line in recent years. It lasted from 2001 to 2010 and came back for a short-lived and not very well-received reboot called Generation 2 from 2015 to 2016. Besides that, Bionicle really has not had any major prominence within LEGO's themes, and it's come to the point where construction, which is the term for construction plus action, as a whole has basically vanished from LEGO's portfolio, with the recent CCBS, or Character and Creature Building System, style sets being in 2018 with the final wave of the Star Wars buildable figures. So, as it is, Bionicle is in desperate need of a revitalization or a coming back to the forefront of LEGO's portfolio, but I think that it has a fair amount of challenges ahead. For instance, there's absolutely no way that you're going to get any of the Generation 1 original Bionicle molds, for a few reasons. First of all, many of these sockets from this era were known to be quite brittle and fragile, and the reimagining of the system in 2011 as CCBS was a drastic revamp of the entire construction lineup as a whole. LEGO is highly unlikely to resurrect old dead molds which have been dead for over 10 years just for a 20th anniversary set. And if you think about it, if you're expecting something like this, that's a requirement of all sorts of old molds being brought back. I can maybe see LEGO doing 1 or 2 at most for a special set like this, but definitely not for a full figure. And that kind of brings us then to CCBS. If LEGO was to release a Bionicle set for this kind of lineup, it would either have to be CCBS or System. We recently had a System LEGO Bionicle idea set, which probably would be like a 20th anniversary celebration set made by the famous designer Sakota. Unfortunately, while that blasted past the required number of votes to be considered for an actual set, LEGO chose not to produce it, instead choosing to produce a typewriter, the house from Home Alone, and LEGO Seinfeld. It was a very disappointing day for LEGO Bionicle fans, which led some fans to believe that a System Bionicle reboot would not be possible with LEGO. So then that kind of brings us to CCBS, but then we face the same problem. We have no idea how many CCBS molds are still in production. In fact, the last time that we saw CCBS pieces crop up in sets have just been a rounded shoulder piece from the Star Wars stuff, and a few minor pieces here and there, although it's been quite a while since we've actually seen a CCBS limb piece or something like that pop up in a standard LEGO system set. Of course, I'm almost certain that many of the mask molds and unique head pieces from the Bionicle Generation 2 reboot in 2015 and 2016 have already been destroyed, meaning that I have no idea exactly how they would do this for a 20th anniversary set, other than to make it completely system. But we'll get back to that later and move on to some of the other sub-themes presented. The next sub-theme up is LEGO Blacktron. So here is an example of a Blacktron car. Now for me personally, this is one of my favorite LEGO Space sub-themes. I love the color scheme, the black, yellow, and transparent yellow. Super striking, and it marked a pretty important time in LEGO's history when they were considering doing some more conflict within their boxes and choosing to make this a villainous faction of LEGO Space. Blacktron still remains one of the coolest things that LEGO Space did, although unfortunately it's probably going to get overshadowed by Classic Space. In fact, many of the Space sub-themes here probably will, which is another very strange thing about this setup that I do want to. But then moving on from Blacktron, we have a few sub-themes of Classic Castles, specifically Black Falcons and Black Knights. These are two very famous sub-themes of Castle. I don't have any representations on the table right now, but up on the screen you should be seeing some of my Black Falcons and Black Knights sets. Now, while these sub-themes are beloved, I question their inclusion in this poll because Classic Castle is just going to eat them up, unfortunately. And then we get to the two big ones, Classic Space and Classic Castle. Now, I would be shocked if these ones did not make it to the top 5 or even the top 3, because Let's face it, Classic Space is one of the most beloved icons of the LEGO group. There's something very, very vintage and iconic about this particular ship and this particular color scheme of blue and transparent yellow. If I have to say this now, and this might be preempting some stuff that will come into later in this video, I do actually believe that the 20th anniversary set will be Classic Space. But I'll get into my reasons later on. Now, Classic Space has seen a ton of references among LEGO's modern portfolio, specifically the logo, although we've never really gotten a retro classic spaceship besides the Benny's Spaceship from the LEGO movie in 2014, and the Exosuit Idea set, which really wasn't that much of a classic space thing. It was really only all gray. It was supposed to evoke some of the more industrial vehicles from classic space, like the rovers that could pop out of the backs of the ships. In fact, I'll take this one out right now. You'll notice that this rover is completely monochrome gray besides the white classic spaceman riding him. So that was what the exosuit was trying to evoke, but we never unfortunately got one that was like fully blue and yellow, all like this spaceship right here. So it's been quite a while since we've gotten anything related to classic space. Last time was 2014, 2015 with those sets, and a ton of AFOLs, and well, myself included, have been badgering LEGO to please bring back some sort of homage to classic space. I am really starved of LEGO space themes, original themes in general, especially because our last original space theme was Galaxy Squad in 2013. We haven't had an original space LEGO theme in 8 years, which absolutely blows my mind. There was once a time in LEGO's portfolio when space was running concurrent to Star Wars. I mean, we got Life on Mars, Space Police 3, Alien Conquest, and Galaxy Squad, and then it abruptly ended and we never saw any more original concepts for LEGO space again. I'm sure that business-wise, LEGO is interested in testing the market to see how well would a modern reimagining of classic space do. And so I'm sure that's why it's on the poll, and I'm sure that's probably, if they do decide to make it into the set, they're going to be watching the sales of that set very, very closely, especially with the new adult-oriented sets. Beyond Classic Space, we also have Classic Castle. Now, Classic Castle has actually gotten kind of an homage in the more recent Medieval Blacksmith set that's releasing on February 1st. In fact, in that set, we get modern reimaginings of the Black Falcons, and the Medieval Blacksmith itself is an homage to one of the original LEGO Castle sets, the Medieval Blacksmith. We actually haven't gotten a direct homage to this original, very classic, yellow castle, besides one very small build that came in a GWP celebrating some LEGO years. Because of this, I do think that Classic Castle stands a significant chance at doing very well in the polls. Specifically, I don't know how it will compare to Classic Space, but I can see it doing very well. Unfortunately, there are quite a few other sub-themes of Castle and Space included here that I feel will draw attention away from the classics, and votes will be split amongst all of the others, which I feel is almost a little bit unfair for these classic lines. If they just put classic LEGO Space as a whole, I can see a ton of people who say we're big fans of Ice Planet wanting to vote for just space in general and putting their vote to Classic Space. But now you have space fans' vote being split among a ton of different sub-themes, Castle fans' vote being split among different sub-themes, even Hex City fans being split among a ton of different sub-themes, which brings us to our next sub-theme, LEGO Divers. I mean, I don't know where LEGO came up with this, but apparently they were trying to think up of what sub-themes of city are relatively iconic that we could include here. We had Arctic, which is a sub-theme of city/town, and now we have Divers. We literally had LEGO City Divers sets just this past year, so I can't see anyone really wanting to vote for this. If you want to see what Divers would look like in a modern setting, go to your local store and buy some of the Divers sets, which are still on shelves today. It definitely is not one that really needs to come back in a fan anniversary set, and not one that I can see really anyone voting for at all. But then we move on to Dragon Knights, another sub-theme of Castle, although not quite as beloved as some of the other ones like Black Falcons that I mentioned above. Dragon Knights was the first time that we got the classic LEGO Dragon, and I'd actually love to see that part make a comeback in LEGO's recent line of sets. That being said, again, much like some of these many other sub-themes, I can't imagine Dragon Knights having a significantly large chance, especially because it will be overshadowed by Classic Castle. Furthermore, the next space sub-theme here is Explorians, another one of the less interesting and probably one of the less popular sub-themes of LEGO Space. I would say that if Blacktron and Ice Planet don't make it through, Explorians has almost no chance, which is unfortunate because they had quite a number of unique designs. It's just that they really weren't as popular as some of the other stuff. The next one is, strangely enough, Extreme Team, another bizarre sub-theme of town that somehow made it onto this list. I don't understand why LEGO would even try to put this on the list, although I do have my suspicions that we'll get into in the second part of this video. But Extreme Team makes no sense. LEGO probably knows that it's not going to stand a chance at winning, not really anyone's trying to vote for it. I almost feel like they included it just to get the number up to 30 and to have a few more sub-themes of town that they could say. But then the next one up here is Forest Men. Now I actually have brought over a classic Forest Man set. This is the Forest Men's River Fortress. Now Forest Men is a beloved theme among castle fans. I personally am not a huge fan of Forest Men. I do like some of the aesthetics. Personally, I would love to see a Yellow Castle remake a little bit more, but Forest Men I can actually definitely see getting a lot of votes because Forest Men, compared to Classic Castle, almost never gets referenced in modern LEGO themes, and it was a really unique Robin Hood-esque concept of a group of soldiers who were living amongst the trees and essentially just making a life for themselves in the forest. That's why they were called the Forest Men. Now, Forest Men was a pretty short-running sub-theme of Classic Space, but definitely left its mark, and I can definitely see it being one of the most popular sub-themes of Castle listed here. Speaking of popular sub-themes, we have Ice Planet 2002, one of the most beloved LEGO Classic Space sub-themes, second only to probably the Classic Space line itself. Ice Planet 2002 was a fantastic reimagining of what LEGO Space could be, featuring extremely bright and vibrant colors like the blue for the ice, the transparent neon chainsaws and whatnot used for their buildings, and all sorts of very flashy colors and extremely memorable builds. Ice Planet was a relatively smaller sub-theme, but left again a lasting impact on LEGO Space fans. It's one of my favorite personal LEGO Space sub-themes, and I'd absolutely love an Ice Planet remake in today's modern world. That being said, again, we're really only looking at the top 3 themes here, and Ice Planet, as I said, is second to Classic Space. So I definitely cannot see this making the top 3. Maybe the top 5, but not the top 3, which is a shame. Moving on, we have Imperial Guards, which is a sub-theme of classic LEGO Pirates. Now, personally, I love Imperial Guards. I love their buildings. In fact, I love them a little bit more than the pirate stuff itself. The buildings released for the Imperial Guards sub-theme of LEGO Pirates are some of the best that they've ever done for the Pirates line, and in my opinion, blow away any of the pirate bases that they've done throughout the years. I love the architecture, the European and Spanish styling of the buildings, and the very unique color scheme of the red roofs and the white and yellow cobbled bricks. Again though, unfortunately, this is not going to have any sort of chance in the polls because it'll just be swallowed up by classic LEGO Pirates, which again makes me question what exactly LEGO was thinking including all of these themes. The next one up is Lion Knights, another memorable sub-theme of LEGO Castle, but definitely not as major as, say, Forest Men. I can definitely see Forest Men beating Lion Knights because it's not one of the most popular ones. But then the next theme we have here is Model Team. So Model Team is essentially what Creator Expert was and what some of the 18+ models are today. Essentially, it's just large-scale versions, not quite minifigure scale, but large-scale versions of LEGO vehicles. So we've got a helicopter as a representative example here. They also had a very famous truck that was actually referenced in the LEGO Movie 2 Welcome to Apocalypseburg set. You can actually see it kind of sticking outside the end there. So Model Team, I feel, is the one that deserves it the least, but I can definitely see people wanting it back because honestly, you can take a look at any of the modern Creator Expert cars, and that's what Model Team is today. They are basically an evolution of large-scale LEGO building techniques. Model Team was really great for its time, but you can definitely see some slightly rudimentary building techniques, such that if a set were to be released today, it would probably just look like one of those large-scale Creator cars. That's why I can definitely see a lot of people choosing not to vote for Model Team, specifically because they feel like we already get it in Creator Expert. Although, maybe there's a small fan base that really loves the aesthetic of the Model Team sets that will vote for it. Definitely not the top 3 though. Moving on to the next beloved classic space sub-theme, we have Mtron. Up on screen here, you can see some of my Mtron vehicles hanging from the ceiling, as well as the famous Megacore Magnetizer, Mtron's flagship rover vehicle. This, again, is quite comparable to Ice Planet in being some of the most popular LEGO space sub-themes, and distinctly different from, say, the classic space stuff. Unfortunately, I don't see Mtron winning for a few reasons. Number one, just like Ice Planet, it's overshadowed by classic space. And number two, the magnet system that they used is actually completely discontinued. The only magnets that LEGO actually do in today's sets, even including trains, is that they have either a very, very blocky train block piece that you use to couple trains together with magnets that definitely poses no harm to children if, say, they were to swallow two magnets that could deal some damage to their insides. And also they just have some other magnets for the LEGO City line, but they're just these massive circular pieces that really do not evoke the classic style. They're made such that if a toddler were to swallow the magnets, nothing bad would happen. So because of those reasons, I don't really see Mtron making it. And then we can move on to another sub-theme of town, which is Paradisa. Now, Paradisa is one of my favorite town sub-themes because I love the pastel colors, a lot of really unique base plates and printed elements for the LEGO system, especially back then. Although Paradisa is basically LEGO Friends. It was what came before LEGO Friends, and even before some of the other lines like Belleville. So because of that, I can definitely see that some people might vote for Paradisa, but not a lot, because you can really get what Paradisa was doing in LEGO Friends today. And then here we have a big one, LEGO Pirates. Now, most of my pirate stuff is on full display, so I've only brought over a tiny little Pirates longboat here to showcase the theme, but LEGO Pirates just got an anniversary set in the form of Pirates of Barracuda Bay just last year. That was probably the best sort of anniversary set they could do for pirates. It combines into a full-on ship that evokes the classic LEGO pirate ship, the Black Seas Barracuda, and it also transforms into a full-on island. So I can definitely see people feeling already satisfied with the Pirates offerings, especially in modern years, and while we haven't had a dedicated Pirates theme in a while, having that one special set come out of LEGO Ideas is probably enough to satisfy most pirate fans, and I can definitely see a lot of the older AFOLs choosing to vote for some of the stuff that we haven't gotten representation for in recent years, such as this classic space thing. Then moving on, we have another classic LEGO sub-theme, which is LEGO Rock Raiders. This was the precursor to LEGO Power Miners and any other underground LEGO sub-themes, and Rock Raiders has quite a huge following, especially internationally, because of the success of the Rock Raiders game, which was an original LEGO game that came out around the same time as the theme in 1999. Now, the premise behind Rock Raiders is actually pretty interesting. It was a group of spacefaring explorers who had a massive spaceship sucked into a wormhole. They lost all of their fuel in the process and crash landed on a mysterious planet, where the surface of the planet was completely barren, but they discovered an energy source buried deep within the planet. As such, they disembarked from their spaceship to hopefully make it back to Earth and start to mine this energy source guarded by the mysterious rock monsters. A pretty unique concept for a LEGO theme, and honestly, just looking at the theme, you probably couldn't even tell that all this sci-fi backstory went into it. That being said, I can definitely actually see Rock Raiders doing relatively well in the polls. I don't think it will beat Classic Castle or Classic Space, but it's definitely a really popular theme, and while you can basically get any Power Miner set and imagine that as a modern reimagining of Rock Raiders, it still would be nice to get this kind of older color scheme back, and now that teal is back in full force, I definitely see a lot of people hoping that Rock Raiders will return. Finally, beyond that, we have Space Police. Now, I love Space Police. I love Space Police 1, I love Space Police 3, Space Police 2 is alright. Now, it's one of the coolest LEGO themes, and honestly, if LEGO wanted to do this, they could package a Space Police set alongside a Blacktron set, because they are natural enemies. The Blacktron were the criminals, these Space Police were hunting them down. Now, unfortunately, I don't see either one of those sub-themes really surpassing Classic Space like many of the other space sub-themes here, although it would be really nice to imagine what an anniversary Space Police theme would look like. And then moving on, we have Spyrius, one of the lesser LEGO space sub-themes, definitely not one of the more popular ones. I can't imagine that one beating anything like Blacktron, Ice Planet, even Explorians I can see being winning compared to Spyrius. So I don't really think that stands a huge chance. And then the last 5 here are LEGO Studios, and honestly, LEGO Studios, in my opinion, doesn't really need to return because a lot of the stuff is really dated. They had this whole Polaroid camera packed into a box, which nowadays they have LEGO Movie Maker sets where they encourage kids just to use their iPhones to take stuff, which honestly is a lot easier than packing an entire camera into a LEGO set. The next one up is Time Cruisers, which I've seen the joke made online. If you vote for Time Cruisers, you essentially are voting for half the themes on this list, and that's because Time Cruisers was a very eclectic lineup of very interesting combinations of LEGO themes, more famously known for the amount of features they packed into sets. So for example, this one here is a very simple one. Turning the wheels activates a rubber band to spin the swirling disc on the side and spin the propeller up at the top. Every single Time Cruiser set had a function like this, which made them pretty fun to play with, but it's such an obscure and kind of bizarre LEGO theme, I can't really see people voting for it that much. And then we have literally just Town. Town in general, so classic LEGO Town. And to that I say, don't we have City today already? Now I know that Town's aesthetic is a little bit different, but honestly, a lot of City fans are probably going to be Town fans as well, and I can definitely see a lot of people being generally satisfied with what's coming out today, and Town being overshadowed by many of these other more interesting classic themes. The final two here are LEGO Trains. So LEGO Trains is a huge one because we haven't really had a dedicated train line in a while, and tons of people are massive fans of LEGO's trains and railroad system. We recently got the Crocodile locomotive just last year, although that was pretty much just a one-off and didn't really signal a massive return of LEGO Trains as a whole. And so because of that, I can definitely see Trains being a massive contender in the polls, and it could even make the top 5 or top 3. The final theme here in alphabetical order is Wolfpack, another beloved sub-theme of LEGO Castle, but definitely not quite as beloved as Forest Men, and definitely not quite as beloved as the yellow classic castle. But with that, we've summed up all of the 30 themes, and now is my time where I can transition this video from kind of recapping all of these themes to discussing a little bit about what I think of this competition, how LEGO is running it, and some of my reservations about what it is. So, you may have noticed that there are a lot of sub-themes in that list. There's a ton of space sub-themes, a ton of castle sub-themes, and even a ton of town sub-themes. Also mixed in are a ton of really bizarre themes that honestly don't really stand a chance, and I'm sure that LEGO knows this. They're trying to whittle down a list of 30 themes into top 3. And I can tell you what the top, I'd say at least 5 will be right now. Classic Space, guaranteed. I would be shocked if Classic Space didn't make it. Classic Castle, almost guaranteed. That's already 2. I can definitely see people voting for Pirates as well. Pirates could be a 3rd. The wild card here is Bionicle. Now, a lot of people want Bionicle back. Hopefully the strength of Bionicle voters will pull through, but I can maybe see it making the top 5. I don't know about top 3. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know about top 3. Maybe I'll be proven wrong by the Bionicle community, and I can honestly see it making top 3, but the chances are a little limited. The other very popular lines I can see here are, as I said, Trains, which is probably the 4th one on my list. And then probably there's going to be a tie between Adventurers and maybe Rock Raiders, because I feel like their popularity is pretty much around the same level. People love Rock Raiders and people love Adventurers. I'm just not sure which one will win out of all of those. But honestly, if we're looking at top 3, Classic Space and Castle are almost a guarantee. The wild card will be the 3rd one, whether it's Bionicle or Trains or something like Adventurers or Rock Raiders. I honestly don't know, but then that begs the question. Why didn't LEGO just compile a list of, say, 10 themes, or even less, like 5 themes, and have people choose the top 3 from there? Or heck, just the top 1? I feel like it's very unfair to LEGO Space fans, for instance. A lot of LEGO Space fans love this classic LEGO Space thing, and when people say Classic Space, a lot of fans don't just think of the original Classic Space. When you say Classic Space, I start to think of, oh well, Ice Planet is pretty classic, Blacktron's pretty classic, heck, Futron, which wasn't even on the list, is pretty classic, and so is Space Police. So that means that a lot of LEGO Space fans are going to be split amongst all the different sub-themes, And that can cause a lot of conflict in between the LEGO space sub-themes as a whole because, for example, Ice Planet has a ton of fans, but so does Blacktron. And let's face it, if let's say there's 100 people who love LEGO Space, 30 of those people love Ice Planet, 30 of those people love Blacktron, and the remaining 40 will just vote for the standard Classic Space. Now, Classic Space will only get 40 votes then. And honestly, 40 votes is still more than 30 for Ice Planet and 30 for Blacktron. So neither of these are going to win, but now you've just disadvantaged Classic Space as a whole because you've given it less votes and split up your fan base. Now, I know that people have 3 votes, but let's just say that as a space fan, you want to vote for one space-related thing, and then maybe you like other LEGO themes, so you vote for one pirate-related thing and one other thing. That really limits the amount of votes that these classic lines will get, and the same applies to Classic Castle, because there are many fans of this yellow castle and want to see it redone, myself included, but there are also a lot of fans of, say, Forest Men and Black Falcons and whatnot. And it's absolutely baffling to me as to the amount of sub-themes included on this list, especially when you get to ones that stand no chance of winning, like Extreme Team or Divers. Now here's where we get to a little bit of what can maybe be considered a conspiracy theory part of this video. LEGO is not doing this vote. In my opinion, LEGO is not doing this vote to whittle down 30 themes to 3. They're doing this vote to conduct free market research. So, LEGO as a company seems to not really quite understand fully what fans want. They have some semblance of an idea, but they've always been trying to pursue and make sets based on exactly what fans are asking for. I mean, that's why LEGO Ideas exists, that's why World Builder exists. In the most recent example of this, LEGO's Big Bang theme strategy has kind of started to sputter out. Ninjago was massively popular and far more popular than they expected, but when they tried to replicate the success with LEGO Chima and LEGO Nexo Knights, the popularity just wasn't quite there, and each theme after the last started being less and less popular. LEGO doesn't seem to know exactly how to make popular sets, and they really just are trying to throw different things at the wall to see what stick. And so I think that the reason for this list having so many themes on there is for LEGO to take this data and say, okay, well, let's try and see what's popular out of here that we can introduce in modern lines. Let's say, for example, that LEGO Divers, which is a sub-theme of City, does reasonably well. Obviously, it's not going to breach the top half of this list, but let's just say it does reasonably well. LEGO can take a look at that and be like, maybe we should make another Divers sub-theme of LEGO City because people seem to think it's popular. The same goes for Extreme Team. I think that Extreme Team was a really strange inclusion in this thing, and LEGO's probably trying to gauge how popular stuff like that even is. Now this prospect is honestly a little bit exciting to me, because if LEGO's willing to put in all of these classic themes to try and gauge which ones are popular, could that mean that LEGO is having some idea down the line that beyond just this 20th anniversary set, maybe they're considering some sort of revitalization of classic LEGO lines, they're just not quite sure where to start. In fact, for myself, I would also be very curious to know, would Ice Planet be voted more popular than Blacktron or Space Police? Or which one would be most popular, even just ignoring Classic Space? If LEGO were to be considering doing some sort of a throwback-esque LEGO Action Space line, maybe they're thinking, well, we could do some sort of Ice Planet revitalization, but we also could do Blacktron versus Space Police. We don't have the budget to dedicate to both these themes, so let's try and make the LEGO fans vote for us so we can decide which one's more popular to do maybe a modern remake of. I am all for that, personally. I'd love to see a modern remake of any of these, and I'm quite fascinated to see how popular these things are. The same goes for the castle sub-themes. If LEGO can't quite include an entirely new theme of castle in their upcoming product portfolio, maybe they're just trying to gauge which ones are most popular so they can even just decide what sorts of minifigures to include in throwback sets. For example, the upcoming Medieval Blacksmith on February 1st comes with the Black Falcon figures. Now maybe LEGO's trying to see, well, is Forest Men more popular than Black Falcon? And if the next time that a castle-related revamp set comes along, maybe we can include some Forest Men nods in there and get some of the AFOLs happy by including some modern Forest Men minifigures. I strongly suspect that that's why LEGO has done this, because if not, why make it 30 themes? Why make half the themes, or more than half on this list, be sub-themes of existing LEGO overarching branch themes like Space and Castle, And why include so many stuff that definitely will not make the cut, like Arctic or Extreme Team or Divers or even the castle sub-themes like Dragon Knights? That's the only reasonable explanation to me, is that LEGO is trying to use this as a big opportunity to gain market research on what kinds of ideas are still popular in today's world. Some really notable omissions here are that they did not include LEGO Western, which a lot of people love LEGO Western. Maybe it wasn't the most culturally appropriate thing, which is why LEGO is trying to stay away from it. In fact, their depiction of Native Americans, or what they called Indians in the sets, was not really that much of a politically correct depiction, so I can definitely see why LEGO was trying to shy away from having more references to that, so I definitely wouldn't expect a Western sub-theme anytime soon. But any other theme on this list I feel is pretty fair game. But then that brings us to the inclusion of specifically Bionicle. Now this one fascinates me, and I talked about it a little bit earlier on in this video, but if Bionicle were to make it to the top 3, it would be probably fighting off against Classic Space and Classic Castle. Now, LEGO has full autonomy to decide what set do they want to represent the LEGO group as a whole. This is not the 90th anniversary or the 20th anniversary of Bionicle. No, this is the 90th anniversary of the LEGO group. Now, can you imagine LEGO releasing a 90th anniversary set that is not made out of LEGO system? Because I really don't see that as happening. I really don't think that's going to happen. I don't want to be pessimistic here because I personally would love to see Bionicle, but I don't think they're going to release a non-LEGO system set for the 90th anniversary of the company. And now that kind of brings us to, well, if Bionicle were to be picked, what choices do we have? And as I mentioned, G1 and revitalizing tons of old molds that tend to crack is completely out of the window. There's no way we're getting any G1 molds back. If we really are lucky, maybe LEGO will revitalize the HOW mold, just as a special kind of commemorative piece in the set. And that's a long shot. That's the longest of long shots. But I cannot imagine them bringing back many molds for G1. In fact, if they're treating this like a D2C or stuff like idea sets, I don't even think they're going to introduce any new molds or bring back any old molds in general. LEGO is very averse to doing so, especially with a set like this that would be a large D2C. It's very rare that we get new molds in sets. Now recently, LEGO Ideas revised their policy on this. They said that if an idea requires new molds, they will make it, like the Sesame Street set or the upcoming Winnie the Pooh set, but that's really on a specialized case-by-case basis, and I think they're only going to do it if it's licensed. They're never going to make a new mold if it's just an original idea. So that brings us to either CCBS or System. So CCBS, maybe they'll still have some of the Bionicle Generation 2 molds. Personally, I doubt it, because let's think about it. Bionicle Generation 2 launched in 2015. Now the closest possible comparison to this is LEGO Ninjago. Now let's take a look. Are any of the molds introduced for LEGO Ninjago in 2015 or 2016 still around today? Very few. There's a reason why for Ninjago's Legacy line, we aren't getting any Anachondri cultists other than the one that didn't have the custom Anachondri head sculpt and instead just had the standard LEGO Mohawk. That's because they don't have that specialized helmet piece anymore. The same goes for the fact that we're not getting any sort of Legacy Master Chen because his wild hair piece does not exist. Even the Jade Blade piece, which is pretty ubiquitous, is no longer existing in LEGO's portfolio, and for the recent Legacy sets, the Jade Blade had to be just a recolored weapons pack in green. If LEGO doesn't even keep some of these standard minifig accessories like this, I can't imagine that they kept the molds for any of the Bionicle Generation 2 masks, which brings us to the final point. Would System Bionicle work? Now, in theory, yes, because Sakota did a great job of displaying what an anniversary LEGO system set would be. But honestly, I think that unfortunately, just being completely unbiased here, we have to move into the next part of this video and start taking a look at financially what makes sense for LEGO to do. The Bionicle fandom is a very fickle fandom because if anyone remembers, back when Bionicle Generation 2 was announced, we got those loads and loads of Bionicle fans who were saying, oh, why is LEGO using the Hero Factory system? Why is LEGO using CCBS? Why aren't there enough pistons? Why doesn't LEGO bring back the old system? Not understanding that it's not feasible to bring back the old system, mind you. And the Bionicle fandom is very split on things. Some people are diehards. They really only want to see the Generation 1 building system back, and if not, they're just not going to buy it at all. They're just not interested. And that's their own choice. I mean, you can choose what to be interested in yourself. Then there's a subset of Bionicle fans who are generally fine with CCBS and just construction as a whole, but think that anything system related to Bionicle is a huge no-no. So if LEGO were to release a system-based Bionicle set, you lose a ton of your fans right there. In fact, most people are fans of Bionicle because the characters are action figures, not because they're system minifigure playsets. People do not like Bionicle because of system playsets, they like it because of action figures. So if you were to make a system Bionicle set, you lose a ton of the Bionicle fandom right then and there. Sure, you've got the diehards who love Bionicle for the story, and will be happy in Bionicle making a return in any way, shape, or form, like myself, but admittedly, the number of people who feel that way are so small, and so small compared to the number of people who want Classic Space back. Now, Classic Space, on the other hand, what is there to argue about Classic Space? People who like Classic Space will just want LEGO to do this set, but in a modern style. They're not going to be squabbling like Gucko birds over a berry over whether they should include the original system or construction, CCBS, system. There's not going to be any sort of battles over that in the fandom and a potential risk of sales. Let's say the Bionicle fandom is represented by a circle here. The Classic Space fandom maybe is represented by a similar sized circle. So on the outset you can say that, well, these circles are probably around the same size. LEGO could take a risk and decide to do something for Bionicle. But this circle is really split into three ways, if not more, because you've got your subset that will not buy it if it's system. You've got your subset that will not buy it if it's CCBS. And you've got your subset that will only buy it if it's G1, which will not happen. It is impossible for LEGO to re-release or revitalize these old molds from an inferior building system that is prone to break. That takes out a lot of Bionicle fans already. You've shrunken that circle considerably in your market research. That leaves only fans of Bionicle who'd be happy with CCBS or any form of construction or system. But then let's say that LEGO doesn't have these CCBS molds anymore and certainly isn't looking to spend the budget on a one-off set to create a ton of new molds. So LEGO's like, okay, well, we'll do a system Bionicle set. And that shrinks your circle even more because you've got your subset of fans who will not touch Bionicle if it's not CCBS or construction related. A lot of people, as I said, just want action figures. If LEGO does a system Bionicle thing, a ton of your fan base is gone. And then that leaves just a very small subset of people who are going to be fine with a system reimagining of Bionicle, which is a huge shame. And that's why bringing back Bionicle is such a complex quandary in today's form, because there's going to be so many different people who just won't be happy with what you do no matter what you do. And again, no matter what LEGO does, it's impossible to please every Bionicle fan. On the contrary, if they were to release a massively upgraded, giant version of the LL928 Galaxy Explorer, I can't imagine a single Classic Space fan being disappointed. They've basically pleased their entire space market. And in fact, this stretches far beyond the space market, because there's a ton of AFOLs who are just reminiscent and would love to relive the old days of LEGO. Let's say there's a diehard LEGO Castle fan, but Castle doesn't win. Oh well, they probably grew up with some LEGO space stuff too. They'll definitely be buying this. Versus Bionicle. If you weren't a fan of Bionicle growing up, and LEGO released a 20th anniversary, or in this case 90th anniversary LEGO Bionicle set without any sort of storyline or new thing to draw new fans in, it's just going to be confusing. Sure, you'll get some kids who may see a Bionicle on the shelf who have never heard of Bionicle before and be like, huh, that looks pretty interesting, maybe I'll pick that up. But that subset of people, if you're just releasing a one-off set with really no marketing, especially related to a story, that subset of people is much smaller than the subset of random kids who see a wicked-looking cool spaceship on the shelf and being like, wow, that spaceship looks really cool. I don't care about the story behind it, I just want that spaceship. I'm sure that LEGO has thought this through. And I think that is exactly why the final voting stage is present. And I think that's because if Bionicle makes it to the top 3 themes, I am sure that internally, it does not make financial sense for LEGO to release a Bionicle anniversary set. It doesn't make financial sense compared to a classic space set. It doesn't make financial sense compared to a classic castle set. That is the unfortunate, sad reality of the matter. If we look at our market segments here, it's just too fragmented. There's too many people who will be unpleased with however LEGO decides to treat Bionicle. I mean, look at how Bionicle Generation 2 was received. Now, I'm not a big fan of Generation 2's story at all, but I can say that these sets were probably the best that LEGO can do. Friction-based gear functions, incredible detail on the characters, distinct silhouettes for all of our heroes. And still, you've got the die-hard Bionicle fans who are like, I don't want it because it's CCBS. Doesn't make sense to me, but LEGO has definitely got to be aware of this. And that's why I don't see LEGO being willing to take the risk to do something for Bionicle's 20th anniversary. And that brings me to the final point of this video. And honestly, a point that I really wish that LEGO could have handled this a lot better. Because right now this poll is causing a lot of strife in the LEGO community. People who are fans of Bionicle, and specifically a subset of maybe relatively immature fans, are screaming at people to just vote for Bionicle, yelling out speeches and saying, please just vote for Bionicle, why would you ever vote for these other things? And essentially just making the Bionicle community not look that good. On the outset, there's a lot of saltier, older fans who are saying, oh, anything but Bionicle. Just vote for the classics. Why would you ever vote for Bionicle? It doesn't even look like LEGO. There's a lot of conflict within the LEGO community, and I feel like they could have handled this a lot better by doing one simple thing. Releasing a 90th anniversary LEGO Legacy line. Call it Legacy or something, I don't know. Ninjago Legacy is so successful because they're re-releasing multiples of different sets. Imagine if Ninjago, for their anniversary, said, you have to pick one, just one set from Ninjago's history that gets to be remade for a set. Imagine the conflict and battles people would go over, whether they want the monastery or a mech or some sort of location or the Overlord Dragon or something. But by releasing an entire theme full of legacy sets, Ninjago allows itself to be able to please everyone, being able to allow people to buy multiples of older sets that they wanted and still have a wide variety to choose from. I don't understand why LEGO didn't decide to do a limited run of not even big sets. I'm not talking $200 each, but just a legacy theme of different LEGO sets. Now, let's just imagine a LEGO Legacy 90th anniversary line right now. Okay, let's start off. We've got a remake of the classic castle. I can imagine this being $100 to $150. Just a massive yellow castle, big flagship set. And another major set could be a Galaxy Explorer remake. This probably doesn't need to be more than $100. In fact, I could see them doing it for, say, $80 and just being really big. Heck, they could even do it on a smaller scale and do something around $50 or $60 to commemorate this set. Now that's only 2 sets out of, say, potentially a theme full of 5 or 6 sets. Then you could do something a little bit smaller for pirates, or even better, do an Imperial's Fort, because we just got the Pirates of Barracuda Bay. They did a tiny pirate ship along the same scale as this, included it in an Imperial Fort, and called it good. That would please all the classic pirate fans, and you could probably do that for around $50, $60. And then they could do a special LEGO train. Trains aren't too expensive if you just have, say, the front engine and maybe just one container set back in the back. They could do this for $40, $50. You've got another legacy-themed train set here. Heck, then they could do an Adventurers one, and Adventurers doesn't need to be large at all. Just do a little small playset, maybe Johnny Thunder exploring some smaller Sphinx ruins with the crew, and call it a day from there. From there, they could release something even dedicated to some of the smaller space sub-themes. I can imagine, say, a $30 to $40 set of just a small Space Police cruiser chasing an equally small Black Trunk cruiser, almost like the $30 to $40 chase sets that they do for Ninjago today, but with a classic space twist. And then heck, they could even do something for Rock Raiders, maybe a little $10, $15 mining mech or mining vehicle that is in the same color scheme. And then you got Bionicle. And by doing this as a theme, you're mitigating the amount of risk because you're not putting all your eggs into one basket. You're not, say, producing a massive $200 Bionicle set, because what would that even look like? You're producing, maybe they could just do a CCBS thing, introduce one new mold for the mask, maybe bring back the old G2 headpiece. Honestly, that probably could call it good. Just do Tahu. $15, $20. there's your small set of the LEGO 90th Anniversary Legacy Wave. It's not a big risk because it's $15 to $20, and you're not going to lose out on a lot of money by making a $200 Bionicle set that 3/4 of the Bionicle fandom will choose not to buy. I don't know why LEGO didn't decide to do this, especially for such a big milestone. Now, I'm hoping that maybe if they learned their lesson from this, for the 100th anniversary of LEGO, which hopefully I'll still be around and a big fan of LEGO around that time, I'm sure I will be. For the 100th anniversary of LEGO, which will be even bigger than this in 2032, maybe they'll realize and decide to do an entire legacy line of sets. But for this being the 90th anniversary of LEGO, and LEGO is forcing fans to whittle down 30 classic themes into just one massive D2C, this feels like a bit of a huge missed opportunity here. In fact, I don't know why, if they're only wanting to do one set, why don't they just combine some of these ideas into one? Heck, have a classic space set packaged together with a castle, or even throw in a Bionicle there for good measure. I mean, there's all sorts of things that they could do with this concept, and I feel like LEGO is really limiting themselves by only committing to one single direct-to-consumer large set. Oh boy, okay. This was quite a long and lengthy video, and I'd be very interested to hear your comments in the chat below. Now, I want to say again, I'd love for nothing more than for Bionicle to be reimagined as a classic D2C. Just imagine what you could do with a massive Bionicle set. I just feel that realistically looking at the market, it's probably not going to be a high chance. So what is the upside to this? There's got to be an upside, right? Now I think there is, because I think that if LEGO fans show how popular Bionicle is, even if Bionicle is beat out and they decide to make a, say, classic space set, LEGO immediately has that market research data showing that Bionicle is a viable concept in today's world. Maybe that can prompt them to start to consider Bionicle for a future revitalization or a Generation 3 in a few years. I think that the key here is showing LEGO that Bionicle fans will be happy no matter what they do. So make that known in social media, make that known publicly, and please don't harass or bully other people just because they voted for themes that weren't Bionicle. Everyone has their favorite themes, and just as you wouldn't want someone to yell at you or ask you not to vote for Bionicle, they probably don't want you telling them why would you vote for your favorite themes, vote for Bionicle instead. And yes, we've all heard that Bionicle saved the LEGO group, but honestly, that was years ago and a lot has changed in both the LEGO and the toy landscape. So I think the best thing we can do here, the chances of Bionicle getting an anniversary set are very low, but there's still a silver lining because we can prove to LEGO that Bionicle fans have what it takes to be able to propel a theme to success. I think that's the big takeaway here. And this basically ends the unbiased portion of the review. I'm gonna say it. If we can propel Bionicle to the top 3, to the top #1 slot, even if, as I mentioned in all the other reasons in this video why LEGO wouldn't make a Bionicle set, propelling it to the top 3 or the top 1 can show LEGO that Bionicle is a legitimate concept for today's themes, and Bionicle fans are willing to put in the time and effort and money to support a revitalization of Bionicle sometime in the far future. I think that's a big takeaway we can get from this. The chances of Bionicle winning this 90th anniversary vote, even if it's voted in and LEGO choosing to produce a set for it, are admittedly low. But that's not what's important. What's important is that we show LEGO that Bionicle is still something that we the fans want and is something that we can rally behind and vote even above many other classic themes. And I think with that message, that's a great way to end this look, a deep analysis of LEGO's 90th anniversary fan vote. Is it perfect? No. Does it have a lot of flaws? For sure. But I think that a lot of LEGO fans can unite and take this opportunity to celebrate what came before and celebrate their favorite LEGO themes. All of the themes that I've laid out on this table are special to me and themes that I personally love. I'd love to see any one of these sets be reimagined in LEGO's modern portfolio. I think that every single one of the themes mentioned, well, maybe not Arctic, Diving, or Extreme Team, but most of the themes mentioned, and especially the ones I have on this table, would make for a fantastic 90th anniversary LEGO group set. I just think that Bionicle has a bit of a lower chance just because of all the factors mentioned above, and as a TLDR, Mold cost, they're not going to bring back G1 molds. They're probably not going to bring back G2 molds. 2, divided fan base. People won't buy the Bionicle set if it's not G1, or if it's not Construction, or if it's just System. And just because of all those reasons, I don't think it's financially responsible for LEGO to take that huge risk when they could do something a lot safer and produce this. But those are just my thoughts on this. I don't want to be too pessimistic because honestly I love being optimistic, and if Bionicle wins, I will take back all my words and I'd applaud LEGO for taking the risk. I really just think that realistically some of the other themes stand a higher chance. But let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this fan vote? Could LEGO have run this a little bit better? And honestly, which themes do you wish would be revitalized in LEGO's 2022 product line? And actually, what might be really fun to do in the comments, if LEGO were to release a legacy lineup of say 5 to 6 sets based on different LEGO themes of different price points, what kinds of sets would you love to see in a legacy lineup of LEGO's 90th anniversary of themes? Now we'll actually know the results of this pretty soon because just in a few days the polls will close and we will know the top 3 themes. So I'm eagerly anticipating that. Hopefully Bionicle makes it, but we're gonna have to wait and see. Thank you all for tuning into Duck Bricks. Whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and please share your thoughts in the comments down below. I'd love to engage in discussions and debate with any of you because, again, this is just my opinion, doing the most educated guess as to what I can imagine the reasoning, logic, and potential outcomes of this contest be. But thank you all for tuning into Duck Bricks. I hope you enjoyed this detailed breakdown and analysis, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you so much, and bye-bye for now.